So I'm glad to be here. For those of you who haven't met me yet, I'm Brezak, and I'm the founder of Netokracija and Luka's co-host on the Blockchain from the Block podcast, here with Yani, obviously the founder of Eternity. Yani, do you listen to the podcast?
I listen to quite a few of your podcasts.
You should. So, to get into it, the idea here is to do a short episode of Blockchain from the Block. I left my co-host Luka to deal with other matters and go through some things that might be interesting to our listeners, who of course are subscribed over various platforms. If you want to listen to Blockchain from the Block, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or even my favorite app, Pocket Casts. That's actually free from Wednesday, I think, so that's a good app to listen to podcasts too. But to start, Yanislav, I'm interested as far as you've given a bit of backstory in the introduction at the conference, but as far as our podcast listeners goes, what inspired you to start Eternity? What inspired this whole story that has led up to this wonderful conference and all the team being here and all the ecosystem as well?
I think that's generally a much longer story than I mentioned in my talk. It started, I guess, with probably earlier than Bitcoin, because I was looking into how to essentially create an online community, and I googled cryptocurrency, and then Bitcoin came out. But I googled cryptocurrency for a reason, and of course Bitcoin is not the only cryptocurrency, and through Bitcoin I discovered blockchain, and then I've co-created or co-founded a few projects in the space. For example, the dark wallet, or for example, a browser wallet for Dogecoin, or another wallet which made it possible to tip any websites, send them bitcoins. Right timing is really important, so maybe I was too early back then. And with Eternity blockchain was kind of like a different story. It really took off quite quickly. The timing was just right, it seems, like retrospectively. And we want to have more transactions than any blockchain is capable of doing, and enable people to transfer value, but not just value, also like timestamp their identities and reputation over time, and everything which is of importance, I think, will be essentially tokenized and put on blockchains and managed by smart contracts and cryptographic identities. So it's, I guess, what inspired me. Like, I have this ambition to do things more efficiently, and I mean, the internet is a very new phenomenon, and generally also digital technology is a very new thing, and there's still lots to explore, lots to work on, lots to research, lots to build. Mm-hmm. And Eternity is one of these projects where all these things take place.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So we're in Prague today. So hello to all of our Czech listeners as well. Like Eternity and the podcast Blockchain from a Block obviously originated from the Balkans, across all these countries that are present in Central and Eastern Europe. What do you think how does the blockchain ecosystem in the Balkans compare to other both international locations, other European cities? Just because of your experience, you can definitely compare how it looks.
Yeah, the Balkans are very diverse. I'm originally from Bulgaria, so I mainly speak from my experience in Bulgaria. I must say that at the beginning, people were really kind of like hidden. It was quite difficult to get people in touch. I also co-founded the crypto meetup in Sofia. And even before I founded it, like this official meetup on meetup.com and with a Facebook page, I tried to find people to essentially meet them up in a more, let's say, private setting, and it was not so easy. Like, I was going through all Bitcoin Talk forum, trying to find people with connections to Sofia, to Bulgaria. I wrote them. I got like 3 people together with me. We were 4. This was a year or 2 before I launched a crypto meetup in Sofia. And there are many, I would definitely say there's lots of technical talent. There, in case of Bulgaria, there were also lots of miners. Now, at the moment, not so sure how much mining there's happening. But Bulgaria, I think had the cheapest electricity prices for private consumers in the EU. So this was very beneficial for the development. And yeah, that's my impression.
Do you think that, I mean, I've been covering startups in the tech ecosystem now in Croatia and Serbia and other countries for 10 years. And one of the challenges that technology companies and startups have traditionally had that you mentioned is there's a lot of tech talent, but there's not a lot of business talent, right? There's not a lot of people that they can create the technology, but it's very hard for them to present it, sell it, etc. Do you think that's a challenge when it comes to blockchain as well?
Yeah, I think that's a cultural thingy. Like generally, Eastern Europe is much worse at selling things than, let's say, the Western world, especially US. So I think a good strategy forward is to build it in Eastern Europe or the Balkans and sell it in the US. If you combine the best of both worlds, then you can make it really work out nicely. Of course, it's also important to change the culture, or let's say culture changes itself over time. And I hope that the Balkans or generally Eastern Europe will be more accommodating and more friendly and more being able to sell their own stuff.
So when it comes to Eternity, what is Eternity doing besides, well, this conference and the podcast to help the Balkans develop as a blockchain ecosystem?
Yeah, with the token sale funds, also Eternity Ventures got funded, which itself funds lots of startups. It's not exclusively focused on the Balkans, but many of the projects originating from there, from Bulgaria, for example, or from Croatia, for example, or from Slovenia, for example. Many of these projects actually are also very international from the beginning, with the people having backgrounds in different countries. So I don't think it's like, definitely there's this region of the Balkans, but generally blockchain technology connects people all around the world, and the Balkans have been, in this past century, have been a difficult area. Actually, Bulgaria not so much in comparison to the rest. Bulgaria was probably the most stable country of all the Balkans. Yeah, additionally to the ventures endeavors, there's the Eternity Crypto Foundation, which is the Eternity Foundation Bulgaria, which is actually focused on the Balkans. Yeah.
If we look at all the countries in the Balkans, but as well as others, so Eternity is based in Liechtenstein, and you mentioned how you could talk to the regulator, you had someone to talk to and to create the company there, the organization there. What do you think that other governments can learn from Liechtenstein's example when it comes to blockchain?
So first, not something which comes to blockchain, but just generally being more approachable and talking to regular people, answering them all your questions, not requiring them to essentially pay lawyers or pay intermediaries to speak the language they want to hear, essentially. Rather have a conversation, a face-to-face conversation, and figure out where are the issues. So this is just a general thing. I think it's valid for essentially every organization, not just governments, but also companies, private or public companies. And when it comes in terms to blockchain, I think Liechtenstein does a really good job with the Blockchain Act, where it tries to essentially give a framework to all the token economy, which is not just ICOs, obviously. It's way more. Now also security token sales are coming more and more in vogue. Liechtenstein is a great place for doing this there legally and essentially wanted. It's not that it's in a, let's say, restricted or gray area or even black area as with so many other countries. And yeah, if you provide a clear framework, which itself should still be flexible and not too much regulation itself, then this can attract lots of business. And I think this is a huge opportunity for the Balkans, meaning that when the governments of the Balkans decide to attract digital crypto entrepreneurs, startups, developers, provide them with, I don't know, maybe a tax incentive, like Belarus does, so people who have crypto can move to Belarus for 5 years, in the next 5 years, and don't pay any tax. I think this is very inviting. So just communicating it publicly, that such new business models and this new technology which powers these business models is wanted and is at least, I mean, even if it's not regulated right now, that it's wanted and that the regulation will be favorable in the future. Yeah.
Yeah. So besides deciding where they want to start their blockchain project, one challenge that some of the entrepreneurs in the room might have, and a lot have in general, is building their team, right? So I was joking with Luca and some others in one of the rooms that, okay, after Bulgarians, like there's most of the Croats. So you built a very big international team from all around the Balkans, all around the world. What's been your experience through building that team? What would be your advice to other entrepreneurs who are thinking, okay, that's cool, I want to build something like that. What would be some of your tips?
Yeah, that's actually a really tricky thing to build a global distributed team. Even if it's global and distributed, it's really important to meet up physically. So we have regularly workshops where we invite people to which are like knowledgeable in their area, for example, about the virtual machine or smart contract language or about community building, and then they meet for a couple days and talk and come much faster to results than if they don't see each other, I must say. But often, very often, if you know what to do, it's much more focused to work from home, for example. And so we also work with many people who have like their stable home, built their home in I don't know, some village or somewhere remote, and they have their family and kids, and they're super happy with essentially everything what they're doing, even with programming, but they're not that flexible traveling, but still super productive because they have everything like in their area. And so I guess if you want to build a decentralized or distributed team, you also should try to be flexible, meaning there are certain things which really need to be followed, like for example also the stand-up calls, like daily calls, where you synchronize with your colleagues about what's going on in a very quick way. And then of course there's physical meetups, which also makes stronger, faster collaboration possible. Also afterwards when people are back home or back wherever they come from, or even like me, I'm traveling most of the time. So yeah.
Cool. As far as again building the team, do you think it's harder for blockchain projects to find people than other tech projects because of, well, I mean, you still have to educate all the people about what blockchain is, what's the potential, then educate them about what aeternity is, et cetera, and or is there now a layer of people who have been interested in crypto and blockchain that it's not a challenge anymore? Or is there a challenge between finding, for example, good tech people, which might be easier because they're more into crypto, than, for example, marketing people or business or whatever? What's your experience?
So my background is rather tech than marketing, and for me it's definitely easier to talk to tech people and make them get involved. I think this is pretty safe to say from the team we have built as well. Also, of course, at the beginning it's more important, especially after getting the funding, to actually build something. So we did. I wouldn't say it's problematic to find good people if you have a good base. So if you start with good people, if the team is, I don't know, if this team is like of lower quality, then it's, of course you will not attract more A players. But usually A players want to work with other A players.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this talk, for the Blockchain from the Block podcast. And I'm, again, calling up everyone who's not subscribed to the podcast to subscribe to Blockchain from the Block on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Pocket Casts as well. Thank you so much.